Every year my family goes on this epic vacation together. We stay at my aunt and uncle's house, that's right on the ocean in West Palm Beach. Their son Will is the same age as me, and we've always been good friends. It's also not just my immediate family. My other aunt and uncle join us, and bring their kids as well. Their daughter Teresa is my best friend. We went all through high school together, and because we're the same age, have the same last name, and kind of resemble each other, everybody thought we were twins. We would love these family vacations, because we would tell strangers that we were twins. As we got older, Teresa, Will and I would party like rock stars on these family vacations. We would spend the day on the beach with the family. But at night, Will would take us to bars and clubs because he was the local boy. He knew all the hot spots. On one specific family vacation from a few years ago, the three of us witnessed something weird. Something that still bothers me and freaks me out to this day. Teresa and Will aren't so freaked out. They think what we witnessed was some kind of prank or just a weird occurrence. I'm just not so sure. The trip was like any other West Palm family vacation. We were living it up. Once in a while on these trips, Will would accidentally have a little too much to drink. Maybe it wasn't accidental. The boy liked his drinks, but because of this, Teresa and I would know exactly when he hit his limits. That's usually when we would call it a night and find a ride home. I was always responsible for us getting home. I would only drink to a certain point and then spend the rest of the time making sure that Teresa and especially Will didn't end up in a ditch somewhere. On this specific night, Will started getting a little rowdy in one of the bars. He kept saying that because he was a local, he could run his mouth. But that's not a thing. He was making a lot of people inside the bar mad, and he ended up getting thrown out of the bar we were at. And I mean, he physically got thrown out of the bar by the bouncer. He was mumbling a lit. Talebit. But he was fine. He didn't hit his head or anything. I think his self-esteem was hurt more than anything. I told Teresa to watch him while I tried to find us an Uber or another way home. He kept calling me a buzzkill, and that's kind of how I knew it was time to go. I secured us a ride that would be there shortly. While we were waiting, I called my boyfriend and just told him about the night we were having. He laughed and told me to call him when I got back to the house. Just as I hung up the phone, Teresa ran over to me, freaking out. She said she wasn't paying attention to Will while she was on her phone, and he got up and wandered off. The boy was in no condition to wander anywhere. I tried calling him, but his phone kept going right to voicemail, which is right on brand for Will. After a few minutes of running around the streets, yelling his name, I heard Teresa shout at me that she could see him. Thankfully, it was Will. He was walking in a very crooked line and heading towards the swamp or forest, or something. I don't know what you would call it in Florida. I don't know the difference between what qualifies as a forest or a swamp. It was a heavily wooded area with a lot of mud and dirt. I'm gonna refer to it in the story as a swamp, because I feel like that's more on brand for Florida. Anyway, Teresa grabbed him before we entered the swamp and started giving him a verbal beat. Will was laughing and acting like a toddler. As soon as Teresa let go of Will, he sprinted into the swamp. I don't know if it was adrenaline or rage, but without thinking we sprinted into the woods after him. It only took us a little while to catch up. He was so messed up that he wasn't moving very fast. Using the flashlight from the cell phone, we were able to see just how dirty and gross this area was. Our feet were completely covered in mud. As we started heading out of the thick brush, Will of all people told us to shush. We both looked at him like we were gonna smash him in the face. And before we could speak, he told us to be quiet again. He ducked down and looked scared. This was a completely different Will than 10 seconds ago. It didn't take us long to realize why Will got down. We heard shouting and screaming coming from somewhere in the swamp. It wasn't just normal screaming, at least to me it didn't sound that way. It was like screams I've never heard before, and I haven't heard them since. The three of us just stayed quiet and stayed put while the sounds of these screams echoed all around us. We couldn't tell exactly where the screams were coming from, but whoever was screaming sounded like they were in trouble. Then almost as abruptly as they started, the screams stopped.
We didn't move.
We stayed put in that muddy swamp for at least another 15 minutes. Then we sprinted out of the swamp as fast as we could and made our way back to one of the streets with the bars. We got a ride home and sobered up real quick. We tried figuring out what we heard so we could make a rational explanation. Anything we came up with wasn't good. Teresa came up with the idea to check out the swamp in the morning. During the day, she said we could safely navigate the area and see if there was anything to be worried about. I know I would never be able to navigate my way back to exactly where we were that night before. But Teresa's good like that. She's like a professional hiker, and she proved that by getting us to the exact spot we were hiding in the night before. All three of our indents were still in the dirt from where we were hiding. We all talked for a little bit about what direction we thought the screams came from, even though it was hard to pinpoint because of the way the scream echoed. We all surprisingly agreed on the same general direction. Teresa led the way through the thick brush. This wasn't like a normal path. We were basically walking through bushes and mud puddles. A few minutes later, Teresa gasped. On one of the tree branches was the sleeve of a denim jacket. Just the sleeve. On the ground below, the torn sleeve was a bunch of different footprints in the mud, almost like it was a struggle of some kind. I was ready. Toji, back, but Teresa pushed forward a little bit. Not far from the sleeve was a small opening surrounded by trees. On the ground was the rest of the denim jacket. Surrounding the jacket were more of the footprints in the mud that looked like they were all bunched up in one spot, again making me feel like a struggle took place here. Leading away from the jacket was one set of footprints. They led straight into more thick brush, where it was impossible to track the footsteps anymore. I was done with all of this. I told Teresa and Will that I didn't feel safe anymore, and that I wanted to go back to the house. They weren't as freaked out as me, but they were uneasy about all of this. We went back to the house, and I don't know why I let them talk me into this, but we agreed to just let it go. I was sure at that moment that we had witnessed some form of potential crime, but Will and Teresa didn't fully agree. They said it was possible, but most likely it was just a joke, or even more likely a coincidence that we found the coat and just happened to hear screaming the night before. Will also convinced us that if we got law enforcement involved, we would be the only ones linked to the crime if there was one. And that scared us. Even though we clearly had nothing to hide, he made the point that it's possible the cops wouldn't believe three young adults were just in the middle of this random swampy area and witnessed a potential crime. Would they really believe that our drunk cousin just wandered into the swamp? If I could do it over, I would have called the police right after I heard the screams. At the time, I just thought Will made good points, and I thought it was best to just move on and forget about it. It's been several years now, and I still think about that scream. I've always wondered if I truly witnessed a crime, or if I just witnessed some intense domestic issue. I'm happy to get this story off my chest. It's been therapeutic in a way to share this. I hope nobody has to ever hear those kinds of screams in your lifetime because you'll never forget them.